This is the Game or Die podcast. You can find us online at gameordie.net. I am your host, Ryan Moore. Okay, here we are, back with my personal top 10 video games of all time. If you haven't listened to the previous episode, I suggest doing that because I'm going to talk about some of those games as well and bring everything into the final countdown. And I'm not going to play the final countdown by Europe because that's cheesy. So, for my top 5, in reversed order, like an MTV countdown, here's number 5. Batman Arkham City. A lot of people will talk about how the Batman games were never good until the Arkham series, until Rocksteady got their hands on Batman. Batman had terrible video games. I'm going to completely hardcore disagree with that. Batman on the NES by Konami is a fantastic game based on the 1989 movie from Tim Burton. Go play that game. It's a Batman game, but it's a platformer, and it plays kind of like Mega Man, where you have wall jumps and things like that. Newer Mega Man. Original Mega Man did not have wall jumps. But at that time, you're jumping off of walls, you're flying through the air like Batman does. You have a lot of gadgets at your disposal too. So that was a good Batman game. The arcade games are not very good. A lot of people bring up Batman Forever, which I don't think it's a great game, but I don't think it is awful like a lot of people say it is. It has digitized graphics, it has really bad voice samples, but it was voice samples. Everything with voice samples back in the Nintendo, Super Nintendo, Genesis area were all really bad quality. So you cannot hold the audio samples as a sign of bad quality for that game. I might have to go back and play it, but I remember loving that game because it was a co-op multiplayer game. Andrew and I used to play that game all the time when it came out. I think I got it for my birthday, and I loved it. I never had a bad time with that game until the internet, started talking about how terrible the Joe Schumacher Batman movies were and the tie-ins around that time. Yeah, they're not great, but Batman Forever is not a bad film, and I'm not going to talk about that because that's not really what this is about. I'm just letting people know that there are some really good Batman games. Batman on the NES. Batman Vengeance, when that came out, was mind-blowing. That is an amazing game. It's based off the animated series, the newer version of the animated series, where they kind of redid some of the art style. So, like, the Joker has weird, dark, just pure black pupils, and, the definition isn't as good as the original part of that series, but it's still a really good game. It's written by Paul Dini. You're battling the Joker. Go play Batman Vengeance if you haven't. It's a really good game. So, the Arkham series. Back in 2008 technically is kind of when that game first started getting on everyone's radar. Rocksteady announced it and they said, hey, we're making a Batman game. It's kind of going to be based on stealth, and everyone went, ugh, another bad Batman game. Ugh, another stealth game. It's going to suck like Batman Begins did. The Batman Begins video game is not a good video game. And that was the last video game that they made. So everyone was just going to be super disappointed. Dark Knight came out. Everyone loved that movie. I think it's fine. It's definitely not my favorite Batman movie. So everyone was already going into this game with low expectations. Come 2009, E3, I went and played that game before it came out. It came out, I think, in late August, early September. But Arkham Asylum was such a game changer when it came to superhero video games. There was nothing like it at the time, and it was incredible. The free flow combat of Arkham Asylum, the level of detail, the level of care and love that was put into that game was so mind-blowing, so unique and different compared to everything else out there at that time. I remember when I went to go see Batman Arkham Asylum at E3 2009, And I was not brought to tears because that's lame, but I was so overjoyed with that game. I had to tell everyone about it when I came back to the store. I was telling people, man, I got to see the original 1989 Batmobile. They had it there. I got to take pictures with it. I got to go see this video game that no one's seeing yet, and I got to play it, and it is amazing. The detail of the level is amazing. The character models are really good. The combat flows, and again, they named it Free Flow Combat, so you kind of knew, but it was such an amazing game, such an amazing experience. They brought in Paul Dini, again, one of the original Batman writers for the animated series, the original creator of Harley Quinn and all that fun stuff. He wrote the freaking game. And then it had the voice cast. All the actors from the animated series were back. Mark Hamill as the Joker, Kevin Conroy as Batman, Arlene Sorkin as Harley Quinn. All of these people were already worked together for years and years and years. So they had a really good rapport. They had a good flow. They had a good chemistry. And it all shows in Arkham Asylum. Why isn't Arkham Asylum in my top 10? Why isn't it number 5, and why is Arkham City number 5 then? The reason is because even as good as Arkham Asylum is, it's a lot smaller. It's a lot more condensed, and it's a lot more tightly packed, which is a good thing. But it's a very Metroid-style game, or Metroidvania, if you want to call it, or whatever, where you're backtracking a lot. I don't like backtracking in a lot of games, especially if the environment is so confined, so small. If you're going to make me go back and forth between areas, branch it out, open it up. The game has a smaller scope in it, and it crams as much stuff into it as possible. I replayed Arkham Asylum back in September of last year, so just several months ago, and it was so fun to go back to. Everything. I remembered every nook and cranny of that game, basically. Some things I didn't remember, so it was still a fresh experience. I've only played it twice, maybe 3 times in my life. And so, since it came out in 2009, 10 years, 3 times, that's not too bad. Again, I don't replay games unless they are usually in my top 10. So, I replayed Arkham Asylum. And then I went and played Arkham City, and I compared them because I played them back to back. I finished Arkham Asylum, and then I immediately went into Arkham City. And I remember at the time, October 17th, I believe it was, 2011, and Arkham City came out, and I was ecstatic. I called it Batman Day because that game released, the Batman Year 1 Blu-ray released, and some other comic, I think, came out at that time too. And this is back when DC was good, when they were making good comics. And so I was dropping $100 at least every week at the comic book store. I devoured these comics. Our Gotham City Sirens was an amazing comic during that time. Joker's Asylum, that comic series is fantastic. And I'll probably talk about all this stuff later, but I got the game and I opened it up and I played through it. I remember staying, and I got a copy early the day before release. I stayed at the store and I played through that game all night. From 9 o'clock at night when I closed the doors, I sat in the front of the store on the couch playing through that game until I got to this weird bug where the game crashed in the middle of a battle with Ra's al Ghul. And that's a decently far length through that game as well. I played it until the sun came up. I played it until 10 o'clock in the morning when the store had to open. And I had an employee, one of my friends, come in and work because I was so tired because I played Batman Arkham City all night long. I didn't take breaks. I went to the bathroom, I ate, but I did all of that and came right back to the game. I played it all night. It was such a special moment. So the reason why I like it over Arkham Asylum is because I think that game takes Arkham Asylum and ramps everything up, like a true sequel should. Most games, when you listen to, or when you play them, a sequel is usually pretty bad. This one is so much better in pretty much every aspect. Arlene Sorkin, the original voice actress of Harley Quinn, who the character is actually based on, I think got in some legal trouble or whatever, so she couldn't do the voice acting for Arkham City. So they changed it to Tara Strong. She does an amazing job, and she's basically Harley Quinn for the last, almost decade at this point. So I was kind of bummed about that because I like having all the original voiced actors from the animated series, but, it's understandable why she couldn't be in that game. Arkham City takes everything and ramps it up. When everyone talks about Arkham Asylum, there's always a but. There's always it's an amazing game, but the final battle with Joker is terrible. It's one of the worst boss fights in video game history because how terrible it is. When I replayed Arkham Asylum and I replayed that part, I didn't think it was that bad. It's not good, but it's not that bad. I've played way worse boss battles in my time. So I went through and played Arkham City, and it just takes everything that Arkham Asylum did and ramps it up. Like I said, a true sequel should. It makes the environment so much bigger. You have so much more space to work with. Whether it's in combat, whether you're flying and gliding around, you have so many more tools. You have such higher stakes involved in the story. The atmosphere of the game is much darker. You got snow and rain falling in certain areas of the game. You're flying and gliding over water. You're flying and grappling over very large expansions of the city. And the storyline, again, written by Paul Dini, is really, really interesting. You have Arkham Asylum basically being destroyed. And Quincy Sharp basically says, hey, you know what? The warden of Arkham Asylum proposes that we're going to make part of this dilapidated part of our city into kind of an battle royale for criminals. And we're going to corner it off, and we're just going to throw everyone in and let them do whatever they want. And we're going to have this psychologist, Hugo Strange, come in, and he's going to kind of oversee and be the warden for Arkham City. And we're going to just kind of see how this works out while we're trying to build Arkham Asylum and stuff like that. So it's a unique story. You don't see a lot of stuff like that where the level of writing quality is absolutely amazing. There's a reason why Paul Dini is one of my favorite writers of all time in comics, is because he writes really well, especially for Batman. He knows that stuff backwards and forwards, what Batman would do, what Batman wouldn't do. You got a lot of young writers or even veteran writers who try and change Batman from what we like to believe Batman is. Oh, Batman kills himself in this one, or takes a life, or he wets his pants or whatever, like Kevin Smith wrote. And it turns Batman into a joke. Same thing with the Kevin Nolan series, or Christopher Nolan series of films for Batman. They kind of made him a joke. He always talks like this. I'm not wearing hockey pads. And it's just every iteration of Batman in pop culture now has a raspy voice, and it just sounds ridiculous. Yes, Batman masks his voice, but he doesn't sound like a gargoyle. He doesn't sound like a troll. He sounds menacing. He sounds deep and tough, but he doesn't sound like a troll. So, I have some really big issues with how Batman has been portrayed in the last decade or so. But Arkham City, it takes place in Gotham City. You're in Gotham City. You're battling people. You're flying around the city, and you're overhearing a lot of conversations. Then you get to play as Catwoman as well. Back when it was released, it was technically DLC, and you can only buy it if you bought a real version. It's a lot of weird stuff, but like I said, that's all stuff that just is inputted into the game at this point. There was a lot of exclusive DLC skins for the game as well. Again, at the time, it was a big deal and a big bummer. But when you buy the game years later, it's not a real big issue because you get everything. You get all the skins and all that stuff. You get to change Batman into the animated series version, and it looks weird. A lot of people were mind blown by how they put a comic version of Spidey in the new Spider-Man game for PS4, and it was like, Batman did it, in 2011. So it wasn't as mind blowing for me, when that came out. But Arkham City is special. It's so much better in every aspect. I think maybe the storyline, because it was so condensed into Arkham Asylum. And again, it was so crazy that this company that no one really knew, Rocksteady, had no clout in gaming. No one knew who they were. No one knew, they didn't have a prestige about them. But now when you talk about them, you say Rocksteady, everyone's ears perk. Everyone goes, oh man, I can't wait to see what they're talking about, what they're working on this year, hopefully, because they've been working on something for quite a while, Arkham Knight came out in 2015. It's almost been 4 years since that game came out, and they haven't said a word about what they're working out. And a lot of people, speculated, oh, it's Justice League, oh, it's Batman or Superman, oh, it's a Wonder Woman or a Ninja Turtles game or whatever. Who knows what they're working on, but I'm excited. Why? Because of the Arkham series, because Arkham Asylum, Arkham City, and Arkham Knight are so amazing. I'm actually replaying, or I played through Arkham Knight twice already since it came out. And I want to try and get and I've 100%ed both the PS4 version and the PC version with all the DLC and everything like that. And I want to get I think if you do New Game Plus on the PC version, you'll unlock a special golden suit or whatever. I'm like, man, I already replayed Arkham Asylum and Arkham City. Maybe I should replay Arkham Knight. And I started to, and I remember how good that game feels. It's just with the PC version, there's a lot of technical issues. And it doesn't meander. It's a lot different than the other Arkham games. I think it's an amazing game in its own right, but Arkham Asylum and Arkham City are so intertwined in the time that they came out, graphically, and just the way the story is in those games. And so Arkham City is just an amazing, amazing game from front to back. You can't really point to a bad part in that game. It's got all the villains. It's got side missions that you can totally miss if you want to, but they're amazing. There's a Mad Hatter level where it gets all twisted and weird. Scarecrow keeps popping up in the collective consciousness of everyone when they talk about the Arkham Asylum games. But I think the Mad Hatter version is a little bit better because if you go back and play Arkham Asylum, the Scarecrow stuff is cool and weird and trippy, but it's not like the craziest stuff. It's crazy, but the levels themselves, where Scarecrow is a big giant and he's got his laser beam eyes, on you and stuff like that, it's kind of a little hokey now. But go back and play the Arkham City Mad Hatter stuff or the Hush stuff. Those side quests are really cool too. And you have no idea this stuff is coming either. You just kind of see in the shadows someone's watching you, or, someone's trying to leave clues for you and stuff like that. And it's a really, really cool game. So Arkham City is my personal top 5 game of all time. Over Arkham Asylum, even though I think it's amazing. I think it's almost a basically perfect game as well. I just personally prefer a little bit more open world, a little bit more experience to it. But again, the whole Arkham series, and no, Origin does not count. It was made by the B Team, a completely separate developer, against the wishes of Rocksteady, they themselves disavowed that game and said, no, the Arkham series is 3 games: Arkham Asylum, Arkham City, and Arkham Knight. And I completely agree with it, because take a series that has a trilogy in mind, they're working on it, and the publisher says, well, we own this license and you guys are still working on this game, you're going to delay it, so we're going to just have someone else put out this crappy pre-sequel or prequel, where Batman Begins, but he's already Batman. And the joke, and everyone's a totally different voice cast. Everyone is looks a lot younger and looks completely different, like it's a separate universe. And it's not an Arkham game. It's an Arkham game in name only. But the original trilogy, Arkham Asylum, Arkham City, Arkham Knight, those 3 games are spectacular, each and every one of them. Yes, there are certain things, certain glaring issues from Asylum, from City, from Knight, but they're all amazing games that every single person should play. Every game in my top 5 is a game that I think not just only holds weight for me, is some of my favorites, but a game that I think I can probably recommend to every single person who likes video games. If you like video games, you should play Scott Pilgrim. If you like old school gaming and brawlers type of style, that's a perfect game for you. If you like JRPGs, play the best one, play Chrono Trigger. If you like open world games, play Red Dead Redemption, stuff like that. So if you like comic books, if you like superheroes, and again, pretty much everyone on the planet does at this point because of the Marvel movies and stuff like that. If you like this stuff, if you like good combat in games, the free flow combat is perfect in Arkham City. It is absolutely perfect. I could not think of something that I would suggest more to someone. If you like combat in games that feel good, that flow really well, the animations all connect together, when you are reversing people and blocking punches, that perfect window timing, it just feels amazing. So Arkham City is my top 5. Okay, so now we're in it. Now I had to start making some real hard decisions about the different numbering for these last four games. This number 4 used to be my number 2 at one point. And it's shuffled around a little bit just on the way that I feel the game holds up now, and things like that. But my number 4 game of all time is BioShock, the first one. When this game came out in 2007, it was something that when I heard about it, I was kind of not afraid, but it was a game that didn't sound very interesting to me. It was more of a horror aesthetic, kind of like a Resident Evil game in a way. That's what it looked like from the trailers and the game material, the press and stuff like that. The way that they presented this game, it was more of a scary game. And for me, I don't like scary games. I've never been a fan of Resident Evil for the most part. I've played every single one of them except for 6 when they came out, and I just never really liked them all that much. Just scary games for me, they don't do anything for me. I just don't like them. Same thing with scary movies. So when this game was presented as more of a survival horror type game in the media leading up to the game, I really wasn't interested in it. So when I saw that the demo was out for the game on launch day on 360, I was like, oh man, you know what? It's a 360 exclusive, 360 and PC, and there's a demo for it, and I was living on my own at the time in my apartment, and I was just like, man, I got nothing else better to do. Why don't I just download this and see what it's all about? So I checked it out, and right from the get-go, there is just this wave of overwhelming atmosphere in that game. If you talk to anyone about the BioShock series, what's the first thing that they mention? The atmosphere. How it feels to be in that game. There's such a rich, dripping atmosphere to that game. It sucks you in. And so I was enthralled. I played that demo in my underwear in my apartment in the middle of the afternoon. And I got about halfway through the demo and I stopped it. I paused the game. I turned off my 360, called my friend Andrew at his game store, and I said, hey, do you have BioShock? And he said, yeah. And I drove all the way over there immediately and picked it up. That's all I needed. That halfway through that demo did such a good job of showing me exactly what that game was all about. And yeah, it's got a creepy atmosphere. It's got a weird aesthetic to it, but it hooked me. And the Art Deco stylings of everything, kind of like Batman Animated Series, that 1950s Art Deco architecture is exactly what I love about the Batman Animated Series. So I was like, man, I gotta get this game. So I went out and I bought it, came home, and played the crap out of it. It's such an amazing game. Another thing that really, really hooked me with that game was the music. The music in that game is all big band, 1930s, 1940s, big band music. For me, I'm one of the weirdos that loves that music. I downloaded all the songs that were on the soundtrack. I listened to them on my iPod all the time. And so when that game came out, I was like, dude, I already love this music. It's fantastic. You got Bobby Darin, Glenn Miller, things like that. And I was just like, oh man, I gotta get my hands on the soundtrack. And so I actually got like the full, soundtrack for basically everything. I had all that stuff. And it was just one of those moments where I was just like, man, this game gets me, This is a game that feels tailored to everything that I love, except for the creepy parts. But, it's a good creepy. It's a good, intriguing creepy. And And then you got the big daddies and the little sisters and the splicers, all these different villains and different characters that are just so enthralling. And I was just like, man, everything about this game adds up. You have a first-person shooter, but you got special powers as well. So you get to choose from shooting a gun or special powers. You got bees, you got psycho powers, you got flame powers, you got freezing or ice abilities. And it works fluidly. You got these characters like the magicians that pop in and out, and kind of disappear on you. And they leave like these red smoke trails with leaves behind them. And then you can use your telekinesis to pick up a dart and throw it at them. Or you can set a trap with it and trap these characters. And so the AI is always kind of coming at you different ways. So it's not just a straight up like corridor shooter like Call of Duty or some of the other first-person shooter games. It's totally different. It's a different way of making a first-person shooter that has such a different feel than anything else at the time. And that's why that game is so stinking good, is that it felt like it was made for me. And so with that game, I was just like, man, this just everything about it, with the underwater city is just such a cool idea. Just on his face, that's such a cool idea for a setting for a video game. You have this underwater city. This guy has just kind of had enough, and he has the money and resources to do it. So he builds a city underwater, and he says, hey, this is unlike anything else in the entire world. You come here, capitalism rules. If you want to build a place in the city and sell your stuff here, do it, and all that stuff. And once that game came out, it was just, it was amazing. It was such a different way that first-person shooters did games. You're rummaging around, you're searching for stuff on the side of where you're supposed to be going. So you're taking your time through this game. You're exploring everything this game has to offer. And you find these audio logs. And yeah, they're way overused now. But again, back in 2007, that wasn't really a thing. So this game did something brand new and told its story from multiple aspects, not just over the radio conversations with the characters you're having conversations with as a silent protagonist, but you're picking up these audio logs of these people who are no longer around. Their lives have been ruined, and you hear as you progress through the story how their lives have been ruined, how they came to Rapture, trying to find a new life, kind of like Coming to America and trying to make your way there. And they either have ups or downs or both or whatever, and it's just such a cool way of getting a little bit more backstory and background on this entire huge city that is kind of an unknown. It's something you don't really understand at the outset when you play that game. If you go in without any expectations, without knowing the story, it's such a unique experience that most other games don't offer. They also made an officially licensed book that kind of serves as a prequel to this. And I got it on, Audible, I believe. Yeah, I had it on Audible. I bought the book, but I'm not a great reader. I'm a very slow reader. And so when I sit down and read a book, it just takes way too long. I get really bored. So audiobooks are fantastic for me. And so I remember going to the store every day, listening to that audiobook and just being enthralled, being captivated by this guy who wrote kind of a backstory filler for all the main characters that you come across in the game, and learning how Rapture actually was made. It was so cool. And then a couple years later, they announced, hey, we're doing a BioShock 2. And everyone collectively groaned. Everyone went, no, please don't turn this into a franchise. There's no reason for it. And it was also announced that the development studio that wasn't working, or that created that game, wasn't working on the sequel. It's an entirely new development, kind of like a Batman Arkham Origins. And so I was very upset about that because I thought BioShock ended perfectly and there was no need for a sequel. But lo and behold, when that game came out, it plays better than the first one. It takes place in the same, city, so you're familiar with it. I think BioShock 2 is a better game than BioShock 1, but BioShock 1 totally changed the course of first-person shooters and storytelling in gaming. So it has that writing on it. It's also just, I think, a more interesting story, but like I said, the gameplay, you either switch between a gun or a plasmid or a special power. BioShock 2 allows you to do both at the same time. It's like Halo 2. You get to dual wield, basically. And so from a gameplay standpoint, BioShock 2 is way better. But it's not as good of a story. It's not it's not as immersive, and it's not as new. When you go into Rapture for that first time, you go into it like a kid in a candy store or going to Disneyland for the first time. You are so captivated by the environment around you that you cannot look away. You cannot stop. You want to explore every single corner, every nook and cranny of that environment. And you want to know why this place is dilapidated. You want to know what happened here to make this paradise hellscape, Why did Rapture fall? And so when you get to the second game in the series, you already know what happened. And it takes place 20 years after you were already there, for the first time. So you get new areas, obviously, but you've kind of already seen what Rapture has to offer for the most part. So it's just not as new. And again, made by a different development team, but I think they did a fantastic job. And number 2 also introduced DLC. And with Minerva's Den DLC, you look it up right now in 2019, Minerva's Den is still one of the top rated DLCs of all time because they did such a good job. It's a full, on its own story that connects and ties in with the game, but it's well done. It's a really well told story with a couple twists and turns. Some of it a little bit predictable from what I remember. I only played it once back in 2010 when it came out. So I don't remember a whole lot about it, but I suggest picking up BioShock 2, and BioShock Infinite. BioShock Infinite I'll probably talk a little bit more later on about, but that series of games, that trilogy of BioShock games, is unlike anything else in gaming. The atmosphere, the music, the art style and direction of the original BioShock game is exactly why it's my number 4 top game of all time.
Somewhere beyond the sea, somewhere waiting for me, my lover stands on golden sand and watches the ships that go sailing. Somewhere beyond the sea, she's there watching for me. If I could fly like birds on high, then straight to her arms I'd go sailing. It's far beyond the star, it's near beyond the moon. I know beyond a doubt my heart will lead me there soon. We'll meet beyond the shore, we'll kiss just as before, Happy we'll be beyond the sea, and never again I'll go sailing. My heart will lead me there soon. We'll meet, I know we'll meet beyond the shore. We'll kiss just as before. Happy we'll be beyond the sea, and never again I'll go sailing.
Number 3 was a bit of discussion with my friend Andrew when we talked about it a couple years ago. I told him, dude, when the PlayStation 4 came out, on launch day, there was a game that I bought for it, and I think it was the only game that I bought a couple games for PlayStation 4 on launch day. One of them was Assassin's Creed Black Flag. Now, I played Assassin's Creed 1 when it came out in 2007, and I liked it. It was fine, but I only played it once, and I didn't 100% it or anything. It was just a fine game. I didn't care for the middle portions of the game where you went into modern day. And so it was an okay game, but it got kind of repetitive. So when Assassin's Creed 2 came out in 2009, I played that and I liked it a lot more. It felt a little bit more full-featured. It had a lot more going for it. I like the graphics. I like the setting of it being in Italy and Florence, I believe. And Ezio was a fine character, but he was kind of a little whiny, but I enjoyed it. I enjoyed having a villa to kind of purchase a bunch of upgrades for and, getting all the collectibles and stuff like that too. It was a fun game. It was much better than 1. Then the next year they released Brotherhood, which was a direct sequel, starred the same character just a little bit after the first game. And I was like, eh. And then the year after that, they did Revelations, same character, continuing the storyline, making it a trilogy. And I was kind of getting sick of trilogies at that time because every single game was a trilogy series at that point. And I didn't like the way that the Assassin's Creed series was going with it being a annual series, and it didn't feel new. It didn't feel fun. It just kind of felt boring and samey. So Assassin's Creed 3 came out after that, and I hated that one. I was just like, dude, and everyone hated that one. So it was just something that I was like, yeah, this series kind of looks like it's going in the toilet. So I stopped paying attention. And this is when everyone was kind of groaning on about that series. Oh, it's the same old game year in, year out. We've had, 4 straight years of these games. And especially with 3, it's just terrible. And so when it leaked months and months before they announced the game, and before it came out, it got leaked that Assassin's Creed was going to be a pirate game this time around. And I was like, oh, I love pirates. I've always been a fan of pirates. I love Pirates of the Caribbean was always my favorite ride at Disneyland. And, I've had a Disney pass for a decade straight, at least. I used to go, at least 3 times a week to Disneyland, even sometimes just to ride pirates and then leave. So Pirates of the Caribbean movies are fantastic, in my mind. So I just was living and breathing pirates. Like, that's one of my main favorite genres is pirates. So when they announced it, I was like, oh, my ears perked up. I got excited. And then I was like, but it's an Assassin's Creed game and it's going to be boring and lame. So I didn't really think too much of it. I just kind of put it off in my mind and said, yeah, we'll see. So when it came out on launch day, it came out actually a couple weeks before, I believe a month before, for the older generation of consoles. And I said, well, the new consoles are coming out. It's going to look way better on the PS4. And I don't really have anything else to buy for the system. So I'll just stay away from all the media coverage. I'll kind of put it on media blackout and I'll buy the game and wait. And so I did. Launch day comes around. I open up my PS4 and I put in Assassin's Creed 4. I don't take that game out of my PS4 for an entire week straight because I had such an amazing time with that game. It is beautiful. Loaded up right now, and a game that came out in 2013 still can be just as gorgeous as Red Dead Redemption 2. Yeah, it's not going to look as good, of course, but it's going to be blasting your eyes with color. Vibrant greens, lush blues, things like that. It's just going to blow your mind how colorful games can be when the art direction calls for it, because you're in the Caribbean, because you're, sailing the open seas. You get that burst of color in every aspect of that game. That game is not bland by any stretch. So I put that game in launch day, I load it up, and immediately you're on a ship doing naval battles. And you are controlling a pirate ship, basically. And you are shooting cannons at other ships, and your ship is getting blown to pieces in the middle of a rainstorm, a thunder and lightning storm. And it is just mind-blowing how cool this game looks. And you get crash-landed on a deserted island, and you have to run down and chase down, this assassin, basically. And you are running through this entire jungle forest. And it is just so green, so blue with water, so white with sand. It's unlike anything at that time that it looked like. And it was just, wow, this is so cool. And you're running, and the run mechanics, kind of, as far as I remember, were tweaked a little bit so that you are just running. You are not getting caught on geometry of the levels. You are not getting stuck and coming to a dead halt. You are flowing, just kind of like Batman, Arkham City, the combat flow. Same thing. You are flowing through this jungle, and you get to dive off this huge, gigantic waterfall, and you're like, wow, if this was a movie, this would be a beautiful movie, but it's a game, so I get to play it. I get to walk around if I want to and kind of explore. So you catch up with a guy, and you get the wrist blades, and you're just and they kind of push you away from everything that the Assassin's Creed series was. Everything that I hated about the Assassin's Creed series, they pulled out. They gutted that series with all the crap that it was associated with and said, you know what, let's make good games instead. Who cares about this story? The story kind of went nowhere. It was very convoluted, very boring to me anyways. I know there are a lot of people who like the Assassin's Creed story and Desmond Miles and all that, but that's not for me. I never was drawn towards that with that series. I hated that part of that series. So you're stuck as just this pirate. You set sail, you go to a city, and it's very lackluster. There's not a lot of technology in that game. You are walking around little shanty towns and things like that, climbing up not super high infrastructures. You're not climbing cathedrals. You're climbing little church towers and, castle forts, built out of sand and rubble and stone. And so you're in nature for most of that game. And then you get to the ship. You get your own ship and you get to go sailing in this open sea, this open world. And it's just incredible. There's such a freeing sense with that game where you are able to do whatever you want, whenever you want. You want to go sailing for 5 hours straight and just go hunt whales and sharks, you get to go do that. If you want to mainline missions, you can go do that too. There's a very freeing sense with those games. So when you go exploring for hours on end, you come across a island or a short, small chain of islands. And once you step foot on there, you can just jump off your boat and the crew will stop what they're doing. They'll just kind of wait for you. Once you step foot on that island, a little menu pops up and says, hey, you know what? Here's all the things that you can do. There's 3 hidden treasures, 1 stone to be recovered. Here's the inhabitants of the island. There's a jaguar and a turtle and an iguana. And you just get to go complete these missions. And this is something that I know a lot of people don't really particularly like about the series, is kind of a checklist of things to do. But for me, I find that very cathartic. I find it very relaxing, where I can sit down and listen to a podcast. I can just listen to music if I want to, or just kind of zone out and just relax for a little bit and play some game. And so I get this checklist of an island, and I don't leave that island usually until I finish everything. And I just go exploring that island for 15 minutes, 5 minutes, an hour, depending on how big that island section is. If there's forts that I need to infiltrate and do other rescue prisoners or whatever it is, I can go do that. And I just spend that time in that world soaking it up. And what also is really cool about that game is the characters are pretty cool, for the most part, and it's a pretty compelling story. And it does have a modern day sections to it, but they are way different than the terribly boring Desmond Miles stuff. This time, you get pulled out of the Animus, and you find that you're actually working for Abstergo, the company that creates these games and stuff like that in the modern day for Ubisoft. And it takes place in a game development studio. So you are a character in the modern day that walks around a game dev studio office and gets to play games, and you're tied into the Animus, and you're working on the new Ubisoft Assassin's Creed pirate game. So there's a meta commentary there that, give or take, is good or bad, but it's just so much more unique and interesting than the Desmond Miles stuff, which I think wore out its welcome within the first section, especially when they did Assassin's Creed and left it on a cliffhanger, and then we had to wait for a couple years. I just hated that. So another thing about Assassin's Creed is, or Black Flag anyways, is that you have this crew and you have your own pirate ship and you can go sailing, and your crew is rad. They sing sea shanties all the time. So whenever you start sailing, they start belting up with all these sea shanties, all this music of them singing a cappella, Drunken Sailor and Blow the Man Down, and all this type of sea shanty that just makes the game, again, feel way more alive than you think it would otherwise. And so I got really addicted to those sea shanties. I downloaded all of them and put them on my iPod, and they're still on my phone today as just part of my random shuffle collection. And, a sea shanty will start up, and I will sing right along with it. It is incredible. again, your crew feels like it's alive. It feels like they're right there with you in the thick of the battle. And again, you have naval battles. So when you start up ship battles, you have control of cannons, you have control of fire barrels. And once you do so much damage to an enemy, you get to actually board the ship and take siege, basically. You get to jump over and swing over on a rope, just like a pirate, and start stabbing people, other bad guys and stuff like that, and your crew boards as well. And there is this gigantic battle taking place on this ship deck. And there's cannon fire, gunfire, swords clanging, and smoke, and it is just pure, unadulterated chaos, and it is so cool. So what I always like doing is I like, and you can actually scale some of the mast as well and the rigging. So you scale way up, and there's a couple people, on the crow's nest or something that are shooting you from down or from up above. And so you go up there and you can toss them off or, stab them and throw them off and stuff like that. And it is just absolutely mind-blowingly awesome that this game exists. It is such a joy to play. And there is no other game that exists like this. I've never recaptured this type of moment, this type of feel in any other game. It is so incredible. It is something that I actually, show people, like my cousin, Rebecca. She came over once and we were hanging out, and I was just telling her about my, week or whatever. And I was like, oh man, I'm replaying Assassin's Creed Black Flag, and she doesn't play video games. And she goes, really, what's that about? And I tell her, oh, it's about pirates. And you know what? Let me just show you. And so I show her, and she goes, man, that is really cool. That's awesome. That looks rad. Same thing with my friend Andrew. I've known Andrew for, since we were in second grade together. And I keep telling him, man, you got to play Assassin's Creed Black Flag. You got to play Black Flag. It is so good. It's so cool. He's like, I don't know. I've heard bad things about it. I'm like, yeah, that series has a lot of issues. And, this was only a couple of years ago, too. He goes, I don't know. And I'm like, dude, you know what? Just try it. I think it was on sale during that time, too, for like maybe $10 or something. Like, just spend the $10. Please play this. It's one of my favorite games of all time. I love this game. I really think you'll like it. And so he tries it and he completes it. And he's like, man, this was awesome. This was a really cool game. And I'm like, I know, right? So it was so fun sharing this game with people. And there's just so many different things to do. There's some DLC, and you get more pirate outfits and things like that. My character looks like uses a Captain Morgan pirate outfit, and you go sailing. You come across these sunken shipwrecks, and you get to actually dive underwater with a diving bell. You get to make friends with Blackbeard also, and you get this diving bell, and so you sink to the depths of these shipwrecks, and you get to go swimming underwater and explore these sunken shipwrecks for treasure, sunken treasure. And you're swimming along, and there's jellyfish, and they're just so colorful. And the music is muted because you're underwater, and you're just hearing waves and air bubbles underwater. And it's just this really cool sound atmosphere to it. And the sound development is amazing in this game. Same thing with the jungles and stuff like that, too. And so you're underwater, and you see some sharks swim by, and maybe a whale or something. And you're just like, man, oh, that's scary. Shark comes at you, starts beelining it straight for you, and you're trying to get some air pocket or something like that. Dive in some kelp to not get found out by the sharks. It's such a cool experience. Like, there's nothing like it in any game. And so there's just the sailing the open seas is really cool. And it's a spectacle of a game. It's a game that wants you to recognize and take a look at how beautiful these games are. And this is the turning point for the Ubisoft development studio, this publisher, where, yeah, there's all these jokes about Ubisoft makes all these games that are very similar. You know, you have a checklist, you have Matt Vomit, you know, where the map is just littered with to-do list things and collectibles. You gotta go climb towers to unlock parts of the map. Yeah. But this is where Ubisoft really started saying, you know what? We have all these studios around the world, and everyone touches every single one of these games. And we just have so many people making art for our games. And this is where it started. I think, for me personally, I think this is kind of where that mentality of Ubisoft giving everyone control of every single game and saying, all right, you know, everyone start making trees, all these different types of trees, all these different types of animals, and the way they move and everything is very realistic. I remember seeing Black Flag at E3, and again, it was like, this is an Assassin's Creed game, but it's a pirate game, so I'll stand in line. You know, I stood in line for maybe half an hour or whatever. Went behind the curtain, got the demo played for us, so I didn't even get hands-on experience, but they kept talking about how, you know, you're a pirate. You get to hang out with Blackbeard. You're exploring jungles. You're on high sea adventures, getting into ocean battles and pirate battles and boarding these ships and all this really cool stuff. And I just was like, but it's an Assassin's Creed game. Come on. And once I got my hands on it, like I said, I didn't take that game out of my PlayStation. I didn't play any other game during that entire week that the PlayStation was launched. And I only played Assassin's Creed Black Flag because it was so good. I played that game for the first day for, I believe, like 11 hours straight. I went out and my dad came home. You know, I was living with my parents for a little bit there. And my dad came home and he said, hey, Ryan, how's it going? I'm like, oh, man, it's great. You got to take a look at this game sometime. And we had some dinner, and then I went immediately back and played it. Comes knocking on my door for to say goodnight. And I'm like, Dad, just come in here really quick and watch this. And he sat there for like 20 minutes watching this ocean battle play out and me exploring some of the islands. And my dad's not a gamer or anything, but he appreciates it. You know, it's one of my hobbies. And he was like, yeah, that's rad. That's really cool. And so everything about Assassin's Creed is Black Flag Assassin's Creed is just so amazing. It's so captivating. It's so beautiful that you can't take your eyes away for it. And yeah, it feels a little bit dated now, especially with the newer, change in direction that Ubisoft has made with the Assassin's Creed series with Origins and Odyssey. And man, I got to talk about Origins at some point, because with Black Flag and Origins, those two games, they were both changes in the formula of what that series is. Black Flag took that same boring formula that they used for many games and changed it. And then Origins did the exact same thing again. And both times I was like, man, Assassin's Creed, I don't know. Those are kind of boring games. Both times I said the exact same thing about those games, and they ended up being my favorites. So maybe there's something to them ones that I'm just like, I don't know, or whatever. But Black Flag is an amazing game, and there's a reason why it is my number 3 game of all time. So with that being said, and knowing, I'm going to show you, or I'm going to let you listen to one of the sea shanties that just captured my heart, as it were. Something that just, as soon as I started hearing it, imagine yourself like I was. Imagine yourself on an empty ocean with a boat, with a crew, and there's nothing on the horizon. You've left port. The sun is beating down. It's a very hot, oceany day. You got the sea crashing against your ship. The ship is swaying, and you got a crew of about 30 to 40 people start singing this song.
I dreamed a dream the other night. Lowlands, lowlands away with John. My love, she came dressed all in white. Lowlands away. I dreamed my love came in my sleep. Lowlands, lowlands away with John. Her cheeks were wet, her eyes did weep. Lowlands away. She came to me at my bedside. Lowlands, lowlands away with John. All dressed in white like some fair bride. Lowlands away. And bravely in her bosom fair. Lowlands, lowlands away with John. A red, red rose my love did wear. Lowlands away. She made no sound, no word she said. Lowlands, lowlands away with John. And then I knew my love was dead. Lowlands away. Then I awoke to hear the cry. Lowlands, lowlands away with John. Oh, watch on deck, oh, watch ahoy. Lowlands away.
So it's come down to this. 2 more games to talk about. And my number 2 game of all time is a newer game, and it is really hard for me to stand here and talk to people about how you need to give games time to breathe. I've had so many arguments online and with friends about, oh, this game is the greatest of all time. You're still playing it. You're still in the game. You haven't even finished it yet. And people always talk about, oh, this is the greatest game of all time. People are still saying, oh, Sekiro is the greatest From Software game of all time. And it's like, dude, you haven't even finished it, or you just finished it. You're high on that game. You cannot take a step back and look at that game without rose-colored glasses. You have to give a game time to breathe. Walk away a little bit from it. Come back to it later. See if it still holds up years down the line. And so my number 2 is the newest game on this entire list by a good long shot. And it's The Witcher 3 Wild Hunt. This game, if you talk to anyone who's actually played this game, they'll completely agree. It is in the upper echelon of greatest of all time. This is a third-person, character action game where, and it's a trilogy of games too. It's kind of got everything going against it. It was a hardcore RPG, computer RPG, with the first in the series, second in the series, again, mainly on computers, and then it kind of branched out into 360. But it was kind of known as a computer game for a long time, so console gamers really didn't have any reason to start playing this game. And when Witcher 3 came out in 2015, it was unlike anything that anyone has ever experienced. This game is so massive, so big, so detailed, so well done, so musically orchestrated. Everything about this is perfection. CD Projekt Red took a book series, a Polish book series that no one really paid attention to unless, again, you've played the games. You have no idea what The Witcher is. So let me give you a little background on The Witcher. The Witcher is a series about a guy who is basically kind of like a bounty hunter. But he's been mutated since he was a kid, and he's sterile. He has cat-like eyes, and basically everyone doesn't like Witchers. Everyone in this setting, in this world, hates Witchers, but they're kind of like a necessary person, this bounty hunter who kind of takes contracts for jobs that no one else wants to do, usually related to monsters that are in this world. You got griffins, ghosts, all the, vampires, trolls, all these types of evil, monsters that live in this world, and no one wants to deal with them. So they put out a bulletin board and, say, hey, we'll hire anyone who wants to come do this dirty work for us. That's what Witchers do. They're the dirty work type of guys. They're kind of like bounty hunters. And so they just kind of do all this stuff. They'll also put out saying, hey, this bandit robbed me, and, he's got a group of people living in the burned out village, to the north. Can you go take care of them? We'll put up the money if you can do it. And so that's what Witchers do. So you have this fantasy world, which I'm not a big fantasy guy either. The Witcher series never looked interesting to me. So when I was starting to rebuild a gaming computer back in 2011, 2012, 2010. It was 2010. I built a gaming computer, and then I wanted to play kind of some of the newer games, and started branching out a little bit and looking up what games are, good, amazing computer games, like to really show off your system and stuff like that. And so when The Witcher 2 came out, I was like, ooh, that sounds awesome. I haven't played computer games in a while, and I've only played a few of them recently. So what's this series all about? It's the second one. Do I really need to play the first one? And I went on some forums and everyone's like, no, just play Witcher 2. It's amazing. It's amazing. So I started playing it, and this is at launch, and I had a pirated version of it, and I could not get past the first section of it, kind of like almost a tutorial section. And I was having such a hard time because the combat was so complicated at the time that it was really hard to do. And I was trying to do it on a controller, and there was no native controller support, and so I was using programs like XPattern and things like that, and I could not get the hold of the combat well enough to pass the tutorial. And also, my computer just couldn't run it at its best specs, and so I kind of put it to the side. And then I went to E3 the year before, so 2014, I guess, and I sat in a closed room demo for The Witcher 3, and I was like, you know what, I played The Witcher 2 for like 15 minutes and could never get past the tutorial, so I'll check it out. And they were just touting how amazing this game series is, how robust the menu system is for an RPG. And I'm like, oh, RPG, no thanks. But I'm already in this, this theater watching this demonstration by the developer, so whatever. I get a free shirt out of it, I guess. So I sat there and started watching, and they were just showing how immersive this game is, how big this game is, how you can pick up quests whenever you want, and you can just stumble upon these quests at any time and leave any time and pick up right where you left off. And they showed this Griffin fight, which is kind of like the main section for that game for 3, like the main tutorial. And so I was just like, wow, this game looks really interesting. It looks really cool, and it looks very detailed and big and immersive. I want an immersive game. Like, I'm really excited about this. So I got out of that demo. I was jazzed on that game, man. I was walking with my friend Jared out in the parking lot, and we were going home, final day of E3. And I was like, and we're talking, oh, what was your game of E3? You know, what was the favorite thing, your favorite thing you saw? And mine was, I just could not stop talking about Witcher 3. He got sick of it. He was like, man, dude, I don't know. Like, I don't like RPGs, and it's a computer game and all this stuff. And I'm like, yeah, me too. But there's something about that game. It looks so cool. So I went home and I started up Witcher 2 again. And I picked it up because they released it. I think it was on GOG at the time, where they re-released a enhanced version of it, where they redid all the controls. They added controller support. The combat was a lot better. And I got through the tutorial and started learning about The Witcher. And I was like, man, there's something to this series. This is really interesting. And then I started waiting for The Witcher 3. I didn't finish The Witcher 2 because I was like, man, I'll pick it up later. And then a bunch of games came out, and I got really busy with work, and I just never picked up Witcher 2 again. I think I got like maybe 6 hours in or so. And then I was looking for deals online, and I was like, man, Witcher 3, you know, it's going to come out, you know, I think it was supposed to be out in like August of that year, or maybe like October or something. And so I started looking on like NeoGAF, and I found a guy who was selling keys for half price for a game that wasn't even out yet. I was like, shoot, okay, I'll pay $30 for Witcher 3. And so I got that game for $30 and waited, and then it got announced that it was getting delayed. And I was like, bummer. But I got the key, so all right, I'll just wait. Waited around, and I think until May of 2015 is when it came out. And the hype around that game was palpable, to say the least. Everyone was talking about Witcher 3. And so you go on any site, like the week it was coming out, and, you know, there was a GameSpot with Danny O'Dwyer did like this 3-part series about The Witcher and The Witcher 3. And it was, I think it was like an hour-long like mini documentary before he started NoClip and stuff like that. And you can tell there's hints of NoClip in those Witcher documentaries. And it's just, I was like, wow, this is really cool. Giant Bomb did a very long quick look on the very beginning of that game. And I remember starting it up and going, do I want to watch this? Do I want to kind of spoil myself? And I don't think I did. I think I just waited until I got deep enough into the game where I was just like, okay, now I'll watch the quick look. And when you get into that game, I was like, all right, cool. I'm going to get into this. I'm going to do this. So I started it up, and it was like, what difficulty you need it on? I was like, hardest you could possibly do. And so I started doing that. And I think Death March is the hardest. And I think that doesn't get unlocked until you beat the game. So like Broken Bones or Blood and Bones or something like that is the second highest difficulty. The highest that you can start out right from the gate. And so I immediately start this game, you know, everything starts flowing with me with the game, the tutorial, and it breaks you out into the open world. You get on your horse and you have to ride with your mentor basically to the first town. And so he takes off, and I go off in the other direction, and I find some water, and I come across these blue mermaidish like creatures. I think they're drowners, and I can't remember. It's been a while since I played it. It's 4 years, basically. So I come across these creatures and I start fighting them. And there's about 4 of them, and I immediately die. They hit me within like 2 to 3 hits, I die. And so I load up the save. I go off in the other direction as soon as my mentor goes off towards the town, and I go try and fight these drowners again. And then I die. And then I do it again after I respawn. 3rd or 4th time, I'm like, you know what? Maybe the game doesn't want me to go fight these guys right off the bat. And so I head off towards the town, and, I go through the tutorial sections and stuff, and I'm just having a blast. I'm like, man, this game is huge. Looking at the map, you have this expansive area where you can kind of take off with your horse in any direction. And you are in these woods and these fields that are just beautiful, especially for, the time. Even today, you load up that game and it is beautiful. It is breathtaking how beautiful that game is. The colors in some sections are very vibrant. The other sections are very dark, and it's just very atmospheric. And so I play the game, I get through the Griffin part, and I just play and play and play that game. With that, there was, like I was saying, I was looking at the map, I'm like, man, okay, cool, I've gotten a good chunk of the way, a few days pass, I keep playing it, and I'm like, all right. And I get to, I'm looking at the map, and in the map, you can see little question marks all throughout the map, and just means, hey, here's an area that's unexplored that has something there. And so I do all the question marks on that map in what is called White Orchard. And I'm like, man, okay, cool. I could stumble across some cool little mini stories and side quests and stuff like that. And I'm having a blast. And then I look at the timer of how long I've been playing the game, and it's probably maybe 12 hours or so. I can't remember exactly. But I know it's not what everyone is talking about during podcasts and stuff, and how long this game is. The creators say it's going to be, there's at least 160 hours worth of game in this game. I'm like, how are people getting 160 hours when I've completed, most of the map? Like I have maybe probably about an hour left of exploring to get the final question mark and then finish up this storyline. What? How? And I was baffled. So I went through, and you find out that White Orchard area is the tutorial area. And I was just like, oh, dang. Once that map gets opened up to where you can go to multiple areas, and there is a huge, gigantic world out there for you to explore. My heart was filled with joy because I could not believe I get more hours with this game. And so you go through it, and of course, the side quest that everyone talks about is the Bloody Baron. The Bloody Baron is you go through the game and you progress until you get to this side quest with this Baron who is known as the Bloody Baron, and he's an evil dictator and all this stuff. So you go there, you talk to him, you do some missions before you get to talk to him. You talk to him, he greets you and he goes, all right, cool. Well, I need you to do something for me. And you can refuse to do it, or you do it. And of course, everyone does this mission because, again, it's infamous at this point. And you start talking to him. He's like, my family left me. Can you go find them? And so you go out and search for his family. And then you find out why his family left him. And then you go back to him and you're like, dude, this is why they left you. And he's like, oh, can you help me? And it is such a heartbreaking tale about a guy who seems like a jerk, but there's more to it than just him being a jerk. And there's just so many layers to this level of detail in this one side quest story that you start, as you play the game, you uncover more and more side stories that have so much more depth and so much more heart in them for just a throwaway side story compared to other games that you're like, man, this puts other games to shame. It's insane how well crafted this game is. It is unique, it is expansive, it is beautiful, and it's robust. The combat, a lot of people complain about the movement of Geralt and the combat of the game. And I think, and again, as the game was coming out, within the first couple of weeks, the team did a lot of patches. There was definitely some issues. I didn't really experience any issues, but I did feel the combat was kind of a little boring, a little lackluster, and didn't feel very responsive. It felt kind of like almost the early Assassin's Creed movement, where you just kind of were doing animations, and a lot of people talk about the animation flow in Red Dead Redemption 2 as well. So the movement felt weird and stuff, and there were some definite issues, especially with the PC version, but they were patching it right after release. As soon as these issues were popping up, they would patch it every week. And they also released a bunch of DLC for free, which was, and still is usually, basically unheard of in the gaming community. You never release DLC for free. And the DLC for The Witcher, before they got to the expansions, is very lackluster. It's very little tiny things. It's costumes and, stuff like that. It's not really considered, I think, DLC. It's like DLC how horse armor was DLC. So I didn't get really too hyped about that, but they did make a change where they said, hey, we're going to throw in a movement option for one of these patches where you can change the way Geralt moves. And so I switched it over to the other movement style, and it felt fine. It felt just like a normal video game. It feels a little, I went back to it to take some 3D screenshots for VR and stuff like that to play around with, but it does feel a little bit squirrely, a little bit light and loose, but it's not an issue at all. If you play games, you learn to adapt. And anyone who has a real big issue where they can't get into a game because the control style is different, they are not good gamers. You adapt, you learn to adapt. So I play this game for hours and hours and hours. I put in over 100 and I believe 17 hours to 100% The Witcher 3. And it took a while. I didn't play through it in 1 or 2 months. I took my time. I played through that game for basically, since it was released, all the rest of the year. I enjoyed myself. I would step away from it for a week or two or a couple weeks or maybe even a month at a time. And then I would go into it with a little bit more vibrancy. And I would start playing a little bit more and do a side quest or do a handful of question marks at a time. And it is such a good game. It's so well acted. You listen to Geralt. And again, The Witcher is a loner. He doesn't hang out with a bunch of friends. So he's with his horse, Roach. He calls every horse that he owns Roach. So he's hanging out with his horse, and he just starts talking to himself. And he's kind of like a detective, kind of like Batman, where you stumble across a bloody patch on the ground, and you get off your horse and you examine it, and you go, I wonder what happened here. And so you use your Witcher sense, which is kind of like a detective vision, and you start following scent trails and things like that, and blood marks. And you basically are a detective in this medieval setting, this fantasy setting. And just the amount of environmental storytelling that there is in this game is incredible. You just start walking or riding in a direction and you come across these abandoned villages or burned down villages, or a character walking on the street asking, or walking along the road asking for help, or you go in a city and you go start talking to people and carrying on conversations, and you just build up this expansive world building that CD Projekt Red has started creating, and it is incredible. And then there was a moment that the moment that really hit me for The Witcher 3, where it was a guttural reaction to how beautiful this game is. I like to use that word for games that I think deserve it. I don't use that word lightly. When I talk about Assassin's Creed and I say it's beautiful, it is gorgeous. This game is so beautifully written. It has such heart that you know they're not faking it. You know it's not some macho movie, type of game where it's just all action-based and testosterone-based. Like, there is some romantic stuff going on, these love triangles and things, and there is just so much artistic beauty in this game as well. And there's this one part where you come across an old friend. Her name is Priscilla, and she's in one of the, I think, largest towns in the game. And you come across her, and you've been trying to kind of track her down for a while. And you go into this bar, basically, and you're with this dwarf, and you kind of go through and find her, and she's up on stage. And you're like, oh, okay, I'll wait for her to finish her song, and then I'll go talk to her. And she plays this song, and it is one of the only times that I actually had some tears in my eyes, because it's such a sweet and beautiful moment in this game. The song is, it's one that just kind of rips your heart in half because of how poetic and deep it is. And especially once you actually learn the story and you play through the game, you go back, and this is what I just did before I started recording, is I listened to that song for the first time since 2015, and knowing all the, and listening to the lyrics and knowing what the story is behind it, you're just like, whoa, okay, I like it. There is some stuff there that I never noticed before, and it is such a sweet and beautiful and depressing song that it literally did bring tears to my eyes, which games don't really do. I've cried at some games. I think there are some extremely beautiful moments in games. I think there was at the near ending, or even some of the other intros, and I think Kingdom Hearts, the music with the stories that are in play just can bring some very emotional responses to the surface in me. And so there's this one song, Priscilla's song. It's called The Woven Storm. And man, it is unlike anything there is. And so I'll play that in just a moment. But just to kind of touch on why The Witcher 3, again, is my number 2, is because it got me into books again, just like BioShock did. It got me into learning about who wrote these books, this Polish writer. And he created a lot of books, and the books are based on that stuff. And so I was like, all right, cool. Well, what's the first book? And I think it's called The Last Wish. And in The Last Wish, it's kind of, it's a collection of stories. It's like an anthology of stories of Geralt, the Witcher. And it starts up right away in like the middle of him witching, in the middle of him doing a contract. And I remember listening to the audiobook as I was going home, several times a week or whatever it was. I was commuting about an hour and a half, maybe 2 hours, depending on traffic, commuting up to the mountains. And I was listening to this at like 11 o'clock at night. And man, it was just like, wow, there's some really good writing. There's some really good stories. These characters are interesting. I want to know more about them. I think the voice actor wasn't the greatest, or the narrator, for the audible versions, but it's still just an amazing series of books. Then they started releasing proper DLC expansions to this game, where, again, same thing. Everyone talks about how amazing these DLCs are, that they're better. This little DLC for $15-20 is better than a handful of AAA released games. You know, it's insane how this game has better stories in its side quests, and better stories and gameplay and features, and how big these expansions are compared to a normal full-priced game. And so I got married in 2016, and so as soon as we got back from our honeymoon, I wanted to finish up. I was kind of in the middle of this DLC before we got married, and I was like, hey, I want to play this. And she was like, my wife was like, yeah, sure, I'll watch you play it. And so I started up Witcher, and she was like, I don't know about this. This kind of seems weird. I was like, no. Listen, it's kind of like Mass Effect. You got dialogue options and stuff. You just don't get to customize your character. The character's already kind of created for you, but it's really good. The voice acting is excellent. The world is beautiful. Like, please, let me play this, watch it, and if you don't like it, you know, I'll play it while you're asleep, or, you know, I'll play it some other time. She goes, okay. So I start playing it, and she got really, really into it. She's like, oh, The Witcher's really cool, you know? And so it was a bonding experience over when we were first married, and it was just a really cool game. And I think there is so much to that series. And it's really cool, too, that Netflix is actually making a TV series about it. You know, they're adapting it to Netflix, and it's going to be a little bit different. I think the casting is kind of terrible for, you know, what it is, but you know what? The show hasn't even released. We haven't seen anything from it, so, you know, I'll be more than happy to kind of eat my words a little bit. I'm excited. You know, I'm cautiously optimistic for that TV series. So those are all the reasons why The Witcher 3 is my favorite, or my second favorite game of all time. And hopefully, like I said, go play it. It is a very big and long game. It's the longest that I've ever put into a single game, one playthrough. I 100% of that game, and it took me 100, and with both expansions, it took me 137 hours to complete. And I've never put that time into one single game before. Like I said, I'll play a game, I'll 100% it, but then I'm done and I'm moving on to the next thing. That game is big, but don't let it overwhelm you. Let me just please argue the point of trying it out. They basically give that game away at this point, you know, on GOG.com. That game is on sale all the freaking time for like $10, something like that. You're getting like 100 plus hours for $15-20. You can't go wrong. If you like third-person character action adventure games with some really brutal combat, and again, the combat can be as basic or as complex as you make it to be. And there are certain characters that require you to use oils, and so you can oil up your sword before a battle. And it will, if you use this type of oil, it will do more damage to this type of monster, or this type of human, or other character, or whatever. You have also magic spells as well. You have fire, telekinesis, shields, healing, and stuff like that. It's so deep and dense with amazing story, crazy visuals. Before I get to the song, one last thing about this game. The sound in this game is incredible. You open that game up and you go into a forest and you have good headphones or surround sound. crank that sucker up and just listen to the trees cracking in the wind blowing through those trees. Look at them. They're swaying like other games' trees don't. And it is just a showmanship of how well this game is crafted. It is excellent. It is, and I don't use this term lightly at all, and I don't know if it is, but it is darn near a masterpiece. It is so perfectly crafted. The design of the characters, the look of the environments, the sound, the music, everything about, in the writing, everything about this game is there to draw you in. You will eat, breathe, and sleep this game if you start playing it and take it seriously. If you play this game, don't get distracted by other stuff. Sit down in a dark room and play it at night, or play it in the daytime, but have those shutters closed. Get that real feeling of what this game wants you to be. Get immersed into this game, and I guarantee you it will be one of your favorites of all time. So, sorry to get a little heavy there, but I'm going to drop a little bit more heaviness on you because I'm going to play Priscilla's song. And like I said, this is a part in the game that brought me to actual tears because it is just heart-wrenching. So, without further ado, Priscilla's song.
These scars long have yearned for your tender caress, to bind our fortunes. Damn what the stars are. Rend my heart open, then your love profess, a winding, weaving fate to which we both atone. You flee, my dream come the morning. Your scent, berries tart, lilac sweet, to dream of raven locks and twisted stormy, of violet eyes glistening as you weep. The wolf I will follow into the storm, to find your heart, its passion displaced by our ever-growing, hardening into stone, amidst the cold to hold you in a heated embrace. You flee, my dream come the morning, your scent, berries tart, lilac sweet, to dream of raven locks and twisted stormy, of violet eyes glistening as you weep. I know not if fate would have us live as one, or if by love's blind chance we've been bound. The wish I whispered when it all began, did it forge a love you might never have found. You flee, my dream come the morning, your scent, berries tart, lilac sweet, to dream of raven locks and twisted stormy, of violet eyes glistening as you weep.
And here we are at the top spot. Number 1, my favorite game of all time with a bullet is, and this is no surprise to anyone who actually knows me, Psychonauts. A game by Double Fine, a game written and directed by Tim Schafer. Yeah, the guy who did Maniac Mansion, Brutal Legend, who created Double Fine, Monkey Island, all these games. If you take a look at his games, they're really funny. They're unique. They're totally different than anything else. And that's why I love Double Fine games, and that's why I love Psychonauts. It is so weird. It is so twisted. It is so different than any other game. That art style holds up to this day. You got to crank up the resolution a lot, especially because it was made in 2005 on PlayStation and Xbox, and that's where I played it, on Xbox. And man, it is so weird. Take a game where you play as a kid going to a summer camp, but it's not just any summer camp. It is a psychic summer camp. And you're playing around with all these other kids, and you go into an activity with this camp counselor who is basically a drill sergeant and who's been in wars and all that. And he takes out a little tiny door, puts it on his head, and opens up that little tiny door on his head, and everyone gets sucked into his mind. And then you find yourself in this this drill sergeant camp counselor's mind, his deranged mind, and bombs are dropping. There's a film reel of a black and white film reel of him yelling at you, telling you to get to basic braining, and you have to maneuver around all these land mines and climb cargo nets and jump out of planes, all in this weird dreamlike state. The visuals are kind of a little hazy. There's a lot of weird crooked corners and unlevel fields to walk through. And everything is bombing all around you, and there's gunshots and firing and explosions happening off in the distance and next to you. And you and a bunch of the other kids are just going through this. And you see some of these little weird floating, what are called figments. And they're just little weird drawings that are kind of neon and pastel in color that just kind of float by, and you can collect them. They're collectibles. And you get out of basic braining, and you find out that you're not supposed to be there. And so the camp counselors all get together and call your dad, and you have to wait around for your dad to come pick you up from this summer camp that you they find out you ran away from your parents. And so you hide out in this summer camp, and hilarity ensues, basically. This is a 3D platformer in the style of Super Mario 64, Banjo-Kazooie, all those type of fun 3D platformer games. What makes this game unique and amazing, and my favorite game of all time, is because it is so weird and so funny and so pure. You play this game and you play as this character named Raz, short for Rasputin, R-A-Z. So you play as this character named Raz, who is just kind of a dork in some ways. He laughs at his own jokes. He's not super popular. He's kind of a loner and an outsider, but so are a lot of the kids at this summer camp. And you go through these levels that are so unique. It's still unlike anything in any game that's ever been created. There's thousands and thousands and thousands of video games, and this game does something totally different than anyone else. Every level takes place in the mind of one of the camp counselors. Like I said, the first one's a drill sergeant. Another one is a 60s, hippie girl, where the whole level is a good time party at a discotheque. So the walls and floors are covered in flashing colored lights like a disco floor. And there's lava lamps, and you're floating in flower bubbles and levitating and using your psychic abilities to go through this level that is in this camp counselor's mind. There's another one who's a very straight-laced, no-nonsense type of guy. His name's Sasha. And Sasha's mind is a square cube. And you walk around the square cube and you're like, there's nothing there. And you do a little bit of platforming, but something happens to him. And his brain kind of starts having these little weird holes pop open, like portals almost. And these sensors come out, and they're trying to block off all the things that he's trying to keep hidden away in his life. And off to the side, you might see some weird type of luggage just sitting in the corner crying. And these, again, are another collectibles. And they're sitting there crying. You're like, what's going on? So you have this little luggage tag that you collected, and you find the luggage that it goes to in another part of the level, and you walk up to it, and it says, hey, you have the luggage tag for this crying luggage. Congratulations, you unlocked this little neat snippet of behind the scenes of what this character's life is like. And so, like a viewfinder, the point-and-click viewfinders of old, and you go through these viewfinder photos of, oh, this is why this character's so screwed up, or, oh, this is why this character is this way. And that crying luggage starts becoming happy. And you go, man, what is that all about? And it says, hey, you found emotional baggage. Like, oh, come on. That's humorous. That's some fun writing. The writers are having fun with this game. Another level is this psychotic milkman who thinks that there's a conspiracy. There's some big brother government trying to catch him as a conspiracy. So he's a conspiracy theorist, and you go into his mind, and it is the most fun level of that entire game for me. And it's the game or the level that I always tell people about. It's the one that I will always tell people and try and get them hooked on this game. I say, there's this guy, he's a milkman, and he thinks that people are trying to steal his milk. So you go into his mind, and it is this weird, twisted 1950s neighborhood, kind of like a Brady Bunch or something like that, but again, 50s. Donna Reed, maybe Leave It to Beaver would be more apt for those analogies. But you go into this neighborhood of 1950s, and blue skies, retro-looking single-story houses, and then there's these guys in trench coats and top hats that look like, secret government agents. And they're all around, and they're all disguised as road crew workers or post office box personnel or something like that. They're trying to not get you to notice them. So like one's standing there wearing, the traditional brown trench coat and top hat or fedora hat, but he's wearing a safety vest and has a, stop sign. And he says, "We are the road crew. There's nothing to see here," and stuff like that. And you're just like, oh, that's cool. There's such a sense of fun with this game. And every level has this weird, twisted, unique style to it. Again, a reason why I always call out the Milkman level is because it's like a fun house in a carnival where you are walking straight and you still are pushing up on the joystick and you start walking, but the world is curving with you or around, and you're walking straight, but the world is curving up and in corkscrews and left and right and backwards and bends back on itself, upside down, inside out. and you have no idea which way is up, but you are still going straight. And if you push left, you go left, but you're technically going up and to the right. And it's this weird amalgamation of level design in this one level. And every level is unique. Every level is different. There's one that's an actress, and so her childhood was filled with being an actor, and her parents never loving her and stuff like that, and sending her off away. And so the whole level takes place on a stage in a theater. And you talk to her little character in her mind who is trying to put on this play, and you have a critic throwing insults at you, literal insults like that will damage you and kill you. And so you have to put on this play, and there's different versions of scripts and plays and sets that you have to set up, and then you have to get the correct lighting. Is it going to be a happy or good version of this play, or is it going to be sad and dramatic and filled with woe? And it's incredible. Every single level is different. Every single level is unique. You also have a hub world, and the hub world is the camp itself. And so you kind of get to explore the camp, and you're in a forest, and there's lots of animals and trees and birds and squirrels and bears and all this stuff. And you meet this old coot that turns out to be, the main psychonaut is what it's called. And the Psychonauts are a specialized task force dealing with paranormal activity. And the whole reason why you ran away to this psychic summer camp is to become a Psychonaut. And so you uncover this basic underhanded evil plot to kind of take over the world by this dentist stealing people's brains out through their noses by making them sneeze. And it's just, you go into an insane asylum, obviously, because it takes all place in the brain, blah, blah, blah. So you go into the insane asylum, and you find a guy who's a descendant of Napoleon, who can't live up to his ancestors, and so he's always afraid, and he's in a straitjacket and crazy. And then you find out that you go into that level, and it's like this weird, hexagonal board game that has such good music, such creative level design, and it's just amazing. I can't say enough good things about this game. The one thing that I will talk about is what everyone used to complain about, which is the final level, the Meat Circus. And this level is known as just an insanely hard, super difficult level. You look up any difficult level lists online, and you'll always see Meat Circus as one of the top ones. They fixed it on the PC and all the newer versions that got released for, I think, Xbox and stuff like 360. But it's not that way anymore. So that's not really an issue. And I beat that game several times on the original Xbox without having any of these new patches making it easier or whatever. So I never thought it was difficult. I think the final boss was just a little bit difficult because it's a long boss fight with multiple stages, and it was a little bit unclear on what to do, but it wasn't that difficult. The other thing is the graphics. The graphics at the time were just weird and, totally different, so that art style still, I think, holds up very well. But because it was 480i, playing it on a PC at 1080p does not hold up. But you can crank up the resolution, the internal resolution, to up to 4K, and it's a lot better. It didn't have an controller support as well on the PC for years. But Double Fine got the publishing rights to all their games back, and so they've slowly been retro patching all these games with controller support and all that fun stuff. So again, not an issue. The only issue is with the graphics is that this game does have some pre-rendered cutscenes, and they are not great by any standard, but they're very short, small little tiny cutscenes of 15, 20 seconds usually. And since it's pre-rendered, you can't update it with better graphics and stuff like that. So when you play this in 4K on PC or, one of the newer consoles, you are still getting 480i interlaced video of a pre-rendered cutscene, every once in a while when you level up, is kind of the term for what you do in the game. And it's just kind of a bummer, but it's so small. It's such an inconsequential part of the game that you can't really beat it down too much for that. So I always tell people about this game because it is my favorite. I think it's the most unique. It's the funniest game I've ever played. And again, humor is a huge thing for me. So I always tell people, play this game. It's super funny. If you like comedy in video games, this is the best. I think Double Fine is absolutely the best in comedy in video games. Costume Quest is another one. The Costume Quest series is fantastic with comedy. Brutal Legend, same thing. I love Brutal Legend. A lot of people say it doesn't hold up or it's lame. I think it's fantastic. I love that game to death. But with Psychonauts, I always tell people, go play this game, go play this game. So when I had the video game store, I would always talk to people and, I'd always ask them what their favorite games are and stuff like that. And they would always ask me, hey, what is your favorite game? And I would stop. And I would think a minute. And I already knew the answer. I was just pausing for dramatic effect. And I'd say, Psychonauts. And they would go, what? Or if someone would go, man, I don't know what to play, I would always recommend Psychonauts. And they go, what? And I pick off I say, you have an Xbox? And they go, no. And I say, of course you don't. Go get one. Here's one. Here's a deal. I'd always push Psychonauts, whether it was the Xbox or the PS2 version. And I'd say, you need to buy this game right now. I don't care what you think this game is. I'm going to tell you right now, it is a good game. It is a great game. It is a amazing game. It is funny. It is enjoyable. It's long, like decently long as well. And so I would always tell people, hey, and I give them the little spiel, kind of like I just did, much more condensed. I wouldn't talk for like 20 minutes straight. I would say, you know what, it's got this one, basically you're a kid in a psychic summer camp and every level takes place in the mind of the camp counselors. One's an army guy, so it's got all this army motif to it. One's a conspiracy theorist, so it's like a 1950s government conspiracy film. And the world twists around and I just kind of talk about it for a minute or two. And then every single time, every person that I talked to about it at the store would always go, all right, you sold me on it. And I would pride myself on that because, again, and this is before the game got repopular again, to the point where Double Fine actually is creating a sequel, finally, thank God, to the game because it ends on a cliffhanger. And they actually created a VR little mini game for it, kind of to close the gap. And I love this game. It is so amazing. And so I'll tell just a quick little story here. One of the reasons I love this game so much now is because I get to have my wife take part in it. When we were dating, I would tell her, I would tell her about my favorite game because she's a gamer too. And so she goes, oh, what's your favorite game? And I tell her Psychonauts. I'm kind of explaining. She goes, oh, that's really cool. So I go, you know what? I have like 7 copies on Steam because, again, Double Fine basically sells that game for 99 cents usually. So I was like, dude, I have an extra copy on Steam. She goes, okay, cool. So I give her the key for it and she loads it up and she starts playing it and she calls me up. And she goes, oh my gosh, Psychonauts is really cool. And I go, right? It's awesome. And so she loves that game now because of how I told her about it. And, she loves me, obviously. We wouldn't be married otherwise. But she was so excited about this game. And she loved this game. And she always talked about it. and she finished it, and she was, we talked for hours on that game. To the point where when we got married, we got a second dog. She already had a dog. So we got a second pit bull, and we were trying to think of names for our new dog. And she goes, "What about Raz?" I'm like, oh, I love you so much. Because how cool is that? I married someone who took my favorite game, played it, loved it so much that now she wants to name our dog the main character of my favorite game. Like, in that she loves that game too. She's not just like, "Oh, well, fine, we'll name it after your dumb, stupid video game." It's like, no, she loves that name. She loves that game just as much as I do now. So it's incredible. It brings people together. It's everyone can laugh at that game. It's hilarious. It's got some really good voice acting as well. Tara Strong is in it. Again, the person who, the voice actress who does Harley Quinn. Also Bubbles from Powerpuff Girls, which I am a huge Powerpuff Girls fan. I don't care who knows it. That show is amazing. So it's an enjoyable experience. It's weird. It's not creepy. It's just crazy. It is so unique. It's so unlike anything else in gaming, even to this day. Yeah, they're making a Psychonauts 2, and you better believe I signed up for that FIG or quote-unquote Kickstarter thing. I am so excited for that stupid game. I cannot wait. Having a new Psychonauts game that will be updated and have modern controls and graphics, and be able to play that with my wife and our dog, Raz, sitting next to us. Being able to play that together, I'm so excited. I'm so overjoyed by being able to play Psychonauts 2, hopefully soon. So, all in all, that is not just the reason why I love Psychonauts, but why I love all these games is because there's so many different experiences that we could have with video games. Video games are unlike any other medium. They're unlike books. They're unlike movies. I think they're better than those. Why? Because they change. They're always different every single time, unless it's a game like basically where you have no control over it other than maybe a dialogue option. And then it's kind of like a choose your own adventure book. But I think video games do something so unique and so different, something that no other medium can do. That's why I love video games. And that's why I talk about these games for, over 2 hours, basically. I can talk about 5 video games for over 2 hours because I love them so much. I have such a passion for them. They're my main hobby. They're something that I love playing and doing and talking about and watching. I can sit and watch, my wife play a game that I have no interest in, but I still enjoy myself because it's a video game and I love her and I love watching her have fun. Video games are community experiences. They can be single player games, but they can also be experiences you can share with everyone around you. And it is so fun to talk about. I don't care if anyone else doesn't listen to this podcast. If I can get one person to think maybe a little bit differently about a game or try a game that they never played before and have them come back to me or write me or not even let me know. But if they can have a good experience with a game that they might not have checked out before, my job is done. And I've done that time and time again with my store. I've done that time and time again with my other podcasts or my friends. And now I'm doing it now. And hopefully you've learned a little bit more about myself and the games that you might not have picked up before. And hopefully you pick one of these games up on a sale and try it out for just half an hour, 20 minutes. Most of the time when I play a game and I don't, when I play a game and I'm like, I don't know about this, I at least give it half an hour. If you can get through half an hour of a game and you're not hating it, and I've played played plenty of games in my time. If you're not hating it, continue on. Hopefully you'll have not life-changing experience, but hopefully you'll have an experience you've never thought possible before in games with maybe one of my recommendations or whatever. So those are my personal top 10 video games of all time. Number 10, Scott Pilgrim vs. the World, the game. Unfortunately unavailable now. Number 9, Civilization Revolution. Yeah, it's a watered down version, but it's the one that I can go back to and just pick up and play and have a blast every single time. Number 8, Grand Theft Auto Vice City. The soundtrack, that boxed soundtrack, is chock full of so many good 80s songs. And that environment, that neon lights is, again, just an environment you don't get in any other game. Number 7 is Chrono Trigger, the best JRPG around with no random battles. Number 6 is Red Dead Redemption, the first one on 360, where you have this open expanse, beautiful, just creamsicle colored skies, the dark night skies. If you didn't notice on the first episode, the picture for episode 1 or part 1 of this top 10 episodes is a picture of Red Dead Redemption and that night sky and how beautiful it looks and how just crazy it looks with all those tons and tons of stars. Number 5, Batman Arkham City, the best in the Batman Arkham trilogy. For me, it's the best. A lot of people say Arkham Asylum, but Arkham City just took everything Arkham Asylum did and made it bigger and better and more fluid and just a larger scope. Number 4 is BioShock. Journeying down into the ocean, underneath the ocean, there is a city that has been built up and then torn down with superpowers and these crazy psychotics that have just ruined the city. And you get to explore that in the depths of the ocean. Number 3 is Assassin's Creed Black Flag, taking it back up to the surface of the ocean and being a pirate. Pillaging, plundering, taking what's yours, taking what's not yours, finding hidden treasures, exploring the sea, and exploring just crazy, insane-looking, detailed jungles. Number 2, The Witcher 3 Wild Hunt. Taking a game that is based in a fantasy setting from a Polish author and making it so immersive, so chock full of the best writing in video games. Stuff that you will not find anywhere else. And blowing it up to over 160-ish hours of just exploring and finding these crazy looking creatures is just, it's insane. And then number 1, Psychonauts. A weird, funny 3D platformer from the crazy mind that brought you Monkey Island and Maniac Mansion and Brutal Legend. Go play Psychonauts. And with that, I think I'm done.